Commodore dominated the fledgling computer market in the early 1980s. The C64 model, which came onto the market in 1982 and sold millions of units, became an icon that is still revered today. At the beginning of the 1990s, however, the company's management made an increasing number of bad decisions, and in 1994 it had to file for bankruptcy. In 1954, Jack Tramiel, who had survived the concentration camps in Auschwitz and Hannover as a boy, founded the company Commodore International, or Commodore for short, in Toronto, Canada. The manufacturer initially sold typewriters, the individual parts of which had previously been purchased cheaply, and then assembled. The story of one of the best-known companies to this day began. Just a few years after Commodore was founded, Tramiel had to realize that he could not keep up with the increasingly strong competition from Japan. So, the entrepreneur initially tried his luck with mechanical adding machines. However, in the mid-1960s, he was once again defeated by the Japanese. On the advice of his main investor, Tramiel traveled to Japan to see the superior competitiveness of his competitors for himself. He returned from this obviously inspiring trip to West Chester, in Pennsylvania, where Commodore had moved in the meantime, with the idea of concentrating on the manufacture of pocket calculators with immediate effect. The necessary components were supplied by Texas Instruments, while Commodore continued to assemble the individual parts. This business model worked until 1975, when Texas Instruments decided to launch fully assembled pocket calculators on the market under its own name. Of course, Texas Instruments was able to significantly undercut Commodore's prices, so Tramiel was once again faced with a fait accompli. He was aware that if Commodore wanted to remain competitive in the future, it had to free itself from its dependence on suppliers. This was achieved a year later, in 1976, when Commodore took over MOS technology, one of the most important chip producers at the time. This move turned out to be a double win. Commodore now not only had free access to the pocket calculator components. The development team at MOS Technology, led by Chuck Bedell, also brought a whole new level of expertise into the company. Bedell was appointed head of development at Commodore almost immediately. He showed Tramiel the future potential of the microcomputer market, which promised enormous profits. Tramiel was convinced, and the first Commodore computer, the PET 2001, was launched on the market in 1977. The PET 2001 was also the world's first mass-produced personal computer that was not completely unaffordable for private households. Although the Commodore computer was not exactly a special offer with an initial purchase price of almost $2,500, competitor models were many times more expensive. Over the next few years, Commodore gradually took over the market leadership for home computers. The C64 model presented in 1982 played a major role in this. In 1983, Commodore achieved a market share of 25%, while the clearly lagging competition from Apple and Hewlett-Packard had to make do with second and third place with 16.5% and 11% respectively. A total of 22 million units of the C64 were sold. Commodore had reached the top, as the saying goes, and only the best was good enough. From 1984 to 1989, the company was a shirt sponsor for German soccer club FC Bayern Munich and transferred 2.5 million German marks per season to the German record champion. This was a successful investment, as awareness of the Commodore brand in Germany rose from 31 to 92% during this time. Commodore had long since established itself internationally, and founded subsidiaries worldwide. In Germany, it was Commodore Baromaskinen GmbH that successfully managed the German business from Frankfurt from 1982 onwards. A plant for final production with its own development department was even set up in Braunschweig. Of course, the development machinery at the parent company continued to run at full speed. After the immediate, moderately successful successor models to the C64+4 and C128, the Amiga 500 was presented in 1987 as a real success story. The Amiga 500 quickly gained a reputation as the best gaming computer on the market, particularly due to its picture and sound quality, which was well above the standard of PCs at the time. 3 years earlier, in 1984, Jack Tramiel had already left Commodore in a dispute. But the entrepreneur had not remained inactive. In the same year, he had taken over the then loss-making home computer division of Atari. Tramiel was able to achieve some successes, for example with the 520 ST model, which at $800 was almost half the price of the Amiga 1000 presented by Commodore in 1986. However, a fierce battle for market dominance now broke out between Commodore and Atari, from which Commodore initially emerged victorious, thanks to the Amiga 500. However, as is so often the case in the history of large companies, crucial mistakes were made when it came to success. Market developments were missed, and a lot of money was invested in unpromising projects. There was also room for improvement in marketing, to put it kindly. At least that's what Dave Haney says in his 2-hour-long film, The Deathbed Vigil, and Other Tales of Digital Angst, which the computer developer filmed during the last days of Commodore International at the company headquarters in Westchester. Almost logically, these failures led to the company's final demise. On April 29, 1994, Commodore International filed for bankruptcy. The subsidiaries were not spared either, with Commodore Germany and Commodore UK withstanding the pressure the longest. Ultimately, however, these two also had to be closed down. The German computer dealer and manufacturer Escom acquired the rights to Amiga for a relatively modest $14 million. By 1996, however, Escom was also history. The rights to the Commodore and Amiga names remained coveted, and passed through various hands in the following years. Palabe Holding currently manages the licenses. To this day, Commodore is more than just a name and a fond memory for 60-somethings. On the contrary, a veritable cult has developed around the C64 in particular. The Australian manufacturer Retrofusion has just announced that it will be launching a new, but faithful case for the C64 in December 2024. This will be available in many different colors, but will not bear the Commodore 64 label, but will be called RF64. By contrast, the resurrection of the PET 2001 is more than just an announcement. Swedish designer Love Hultén, known for his elegant, fully functional retro consoles and computers, took on the first Commodore computer in 2018. The true-to-original housing of his PET Deluxe is made from American walnut wood, while contemporary technology is at work inside. This ensures that even titles that were only available for the C64 at the time can be played on the PET Deluxe. We have come to the end of this video on the Commodore 64, which changed the way a generation viewed the world, and paved the way for them to take their first steps into the computer age. Have you used this computer? Do you still keep it in a corner of your home? I'm waiting for your thoughts and memories in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel, open the contact option, and click the like button so that you don't miss the videos we have published in the past, and the videos we will publish in the future. Goodbye, and see you in another video on another topic.